Hello, everyone. It's me again. It was good seeing you this past week. We continue our discussion regarding the topic family. In particular, we looked at a very sensitive issue that's violence in the family setting and the different forms that it could take. We discussed information regarding spousal abuse, and I mentioned to you the story of Francine Hughes, which took place in the 1960s, 1970s, where she ended up killing her husband after being abused by him for several years. Her story was eventually published in a book and then made into a motion picture. We also talked about child abuse, how child abuse is something that happens every day. If you work with children, you are a mandatory reporter if you suspect that a child is being abused. I mentioned to you the story of Lisa Steinberg. In addition, a form of child abuse, which many of you had never heard of before, and that's Munchausen syndrome by proxy. It's where a parent caregiver is making the child sick on purpose in order to gain attention. And we would never think for a moment that someone who is taking care of a child would actually do that to that individual, but it does happen. And I showed you a handout information about it, as well as we looked at a clip from The Sixth Sense regarding Munchausen syndrome by proxy, a form of child abuse. Now, there are two others that I want to talk to you today about. One is abuse of the elderly, which is on the rise in America today. One reason being is because the baby boom generation is getting older, and they are a large percentage of the population. And so we do see in the news or different forms of media abuse of them, abuse of the elderly. What I'd like to show you right now is how that abuse would actually occur with the elderly. We have abuse of the elderly in the middle here. There is physical abuse, well documented stories regarding elderly people being abused either by their own children or by a caretaker or caretakers who are in charge of taking care of them. Sexual abuse, reported cases of sexual abuse. Neglect. When I say neglect, the idea that an elderly person is depending on someone to care for them, to care for providing them with food, their hygiene, providing them with clean clothes. Not always the case. Active torment. Active torment basically means this is that elderly people are told either by their child or children that they're going to be put in some type of care facility, some type of retirement home, constantly being reminded of that, being tormented that that might be the consequence. Verbal abuse, something that I've witnessed with my own eyes, where elderly people are verbally abused because they're not doing what people want them to do, at least their opinion. And the last one here, which is the most prevalent when it comes to abuse of the elderly, that's financially, where it's been documented. In fact, 60 Minutes had a special on it a couple of years ago where elderly people were being called up, they were being scammed, told that they had won a lottery, and that to claim their winnings, all they had to do was to send in the money that would cover the taxes on it. The problem being is that they were never mailed their winnings, and some people were scammed of upwards to $200,000 to $300,000 financially. I've also heard stories over the years where elderly people, senior citizens, get calls that their grandchild is in jail, that they've been arrested, they need money to bail them out. Again, there's a lot of scams that happen with elderly people, whether it's on the phone or through the internet. A lot of reasons why, age, of course, but these people are coming from a generation that they were trusting of other people. But the problem being is that their trust has not being upheld by people. People are violating their trust. and you think about what motivates people to abuse the elderly, there's a lot of reasons why. I can't understand why people would do that. Just are they vulnerable, taking advantage of them? But again, we do see abuse of the elderly on the rise in America today, taking all these different forms. It could possibly be tied to a term called ageism, which is prejudice and discrimination against elderly people. The term ageism could also be used to explain what motivates people to abuse the elderly. We're all going to grow old someday, me before you. We hope that at least that we're going to become more aware of this, and that we're able to detect and to rescue, prevent elderly people from being abused. And the last form of family violence that I want to talk to you today about, which happens to be the most common, is abuse among siblings. And again, it's hard to believe that siblings might show violence, abuse toward each other, but it is documented. I've had a sibling, you might have a sibling, and again, I have one. You think fights, normal fights, they happen among siblings. I have 2 children, but the question is, when is the line actually crossed? When it's actually abuse that's occurring among siblings, and it could take many forms. It could take physical, verbal. It's even been documented sexually as well, that siblings have abused each other, or a combination. Tendency is with siblings, the reasons why it occurs is jealousy. They feel that they're being favored over another sibling or siblings. Possessions, where siblings might take their possessions and not return them. Or again, it could be a combination of them. So there's a lot of reasons why this abuse occurs among siblings, but it is the most common of them. Now, I also sent you earlier today an assignment in the classroom that I want to go over with you, and I'll bring that up. This is going to be due at 1 p.m. the next time we meet virtually on Tuesday, in regards to changes in marriage and the family. You're going to be looking at the attached handout, which is this. You're going to be picking one of these topics, whether it's blended families, single parent families, childless marriages, going all the way down to boomerang kids, which some of you might find yourself in. And you're going to be preparing a presentation, whether it is in a Google slide or a Google Doc of at least 5 key points of information. Please note you must be present for this assignment to count. If you have any questions about it, please reach out to me. And I also want to mention to you that you're going to look at the handout, and there's going to be information on same-sex marriage, and not quite up to date, but here is the updated information. The Supreme Court ruled in 2015 that same-sex marriage is now legal across the United States of America. So again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I do have office hours, or I could speak to you individually by sending you a Google Calendar invite. Enjoy the rest of the day. Enjoy your weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday. Bye-bye.